This week on Talking Royals, Chris and Lizzie join Prince William in Estonia as he rides a tank near the Russian border.
We just kept saying, which one is he on? Which one is he on? Because, you have that split second to get that shot.
Everyone's very worried about the, what they call their hostile neighbour.
We look back at how Princess Anne escaped an attempted kidnapping.
Buckingham Palace said they're obviously very shaken.
She basically said, not on your Nelly am I getting out of this car.
And we've unearthed a very special picture of a royal in disguise. Hello and welcome to Talking Royals. I'm Charlene White, and if you're watching the show rather than listening to it, you'll see I'm all on my lonesome in the studio today because Chris and Lizzie have jetted off to a royal trip in Estonia. So we decided to join you from Estonia instead. How are you guys?
We're okay, aren't we? It's colder here. Everyone's been talking about how much spring-like it's been feeling in the UK this week. I'll have to say it's Baltic in the Baltics.
Unsurprisingly, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. The weather's been absolutely gorgeous here. You're with Prince William, right?
Yep, we are in Estonia for a 2-day visit by the Prince of Wales, his first ever visit to Estonia and first visits for both of us as well.
And what's the food like? Tell us. I've never been to Estonia either. What's it like?
There's a really interesting question because, and often people say, oh yeah, the restaurants must be nice and what kind of sightseeing have you been doing? The food that we've had has generally been eaten in this room. It's kind of like a quiche. Ellie, would you call it? Ellie's our camera person on this trip. A quiche?
Lukewarm quiche.
Lukewarm quiche with a bit of chicken in it. We've had that for 2 nights, and then last night these two got some takeaway pizza on Bolt Eats, which is a bit like Uber Eats. So that's the food we've had.
The royal tours are, the days are packed full of engagements where you join the member of the royal family on whatever engagements they're doing, and then the evenings tend to be when we put our pieces together. So they're fairly full on, but it's been great to be here and to see Estonia for the first time.
Yeah, Charlene, we're 2 hours ahead of you. So actually news at 10, for example, is on at midnight here. So we spent most of the evening sort of editing for the news. But actually, in terms of the news, it's been pretty busy because although this trip was in the planning for 6 months or so, it's come, as we've been discussing in recent weeks, at a very interesting time. You've got Prince William taking what his office says is a sort of lead on the global stage. And we've just come back just this morning, actually, from how would you describe where we were this morning? A big, muddy, frozen field with trenches in it, which is where the British troops who are stationed here do all their training. And William is the Colonel-in-Chief of the Mercian Regiment, and he was there kicking off their 6-month tour of duty. And it's a pretty inhospitable place where we were. About, less than 100 miles from the Russian border?
Yeah, it's known as Tapa Camp, and there are about 900 British troops stationed there at any one time. And as Chris said, William was there overseeing the handover between the Royal Dragoon Guards and the Mercian Regiment, who he's Colonel-in-Chief of. And we joined him on a field training exercise where he got to see the Mercian Regiment running through some exercises. And we saw him on an armoured vehicle, didn't we? And
what's a tank and what's not a tank?
Yes, we've had a lot of questions about that.
The kind of things you have to learn. So a Challenger is a tank.
Right.
An Archer has a big sort of rocket on the back.
Yep.
And the other one was a Warrior. Which is not a Warrior is not a tank. It's an armoured vehicle. So
So he arrived at the exercise on a Warrior, but he did go on the other vehicles as well. And then he watched, didn't he? There were troops in the trenches, lots of yellow smoke as well.
I think we call it. It's not live ammunition, but it's certainly lots of noise going around.
For a minute, I actually thought you were in like a live situation where it was real bullets, and it took me a while to realise actually it's all like for show. I was a bit worried about you, is what I was going to say.
Well, you said last week you'd like to come on these trips. I've just seen in Ellie's, the camera lady's bathroom, her muddy shoes, which are sat in the bath waiting to be clean, absolutely caked in mud. Now, this is the sort of trip you want to do, Charlene. You're welcome to come with us anytime you like. It's been, 1 or 2 degrees here, and we've been running through mud. So, yeah, you're welcome. Come back next time. And talking of this muddy field, actually, I was trying to get an interview with the commanding officer, and poor old Lizzie and Ellie, who I've mentioned a couple of times now, were sort of trying to get over this trench and get round to where we were. We almost had to rugby tackle this guy to the ground to catch him, but this is how Lieutenant Colonel Grant Brown of the Mercian Regiment spoke about the kind of conditions in which they work, and actually, interestingly, about the kind of trench warfare in which they train.
I think, the reality is what we're seeing out on the ground in various parts of the world is a return to some of these sort of static conflicts. Right. And therefore we need to be prepared to fight in those conditions.
And does that include trenches? I mean, that's kind of what we've been seeing in Ukraine, for example, when we're, less than 100 miles from the Russian border here?
Absolutely. And so, some people have described it as sort of World War I with drones. But we just need to understand that, there is a way of warfare that we might wish it to be, and then there's a way of warfare that's currently happening, and we need to be prepared to fight in all of those ways.
The engagements are quite tightly packed together, or were, when we were at the camp with William, and the engagement that we were covering, this field training exercise, we arrived just ahead of him, and we had to get from the media bus across a muddy field with all the equipment, and we could hear the armoured vehicles coming towards us, and we just kept saying, which one is he on, which one is he on, because you have that split second to get that shot for the rest of the broadcasters that are also travelling here, so you can't miss it, but so we're like, which one are we looking out for him on?
Oh, goodness me. Now, I've already told you, Chris, I'll join you for the ones that are in like the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand. I'll do those ones. You guys are fine doing this one all by yourself. I feel like it's in safe hands. But that's not the only role that...
I think that's called picking and choosing.
Yes, it is called picking and choosing, and I love it. Now, there are other roles that have been out and about this week. The King and Queen are in Northern Ireland. There's been a bit of a clash this week, with William being in Estonia and, his dad and stepmum being in Northern Ireland.
It's quite interesting, actually, because the royal family have what's sort of known as this grid system, which is essentially a diary. And it's the intention is that things don't clash. So, when a member of the royal family is abroad, their visit sort of takes precedence. They know that that's going to attract a lot of coverage. They want those visits to attract a lot of coverage. So they tend not to get that much overlap. So we were quite surprised when the Northern Ireland visit was announced to be on the same 3 days as William's trip to Estonia. Now, the King and Queen go to Northern Ireland at around this time every year. Yes, they would be carrying out engagements this week, but the UK royal rota who follow them are, the majority of us are here with William, whereas I think if they'd split the visits, we probably would have all gone to Northern Ireland as well. So I was surprised that the 2 visits happened at the same time.
Actually, Charlene, what's quite interesting is they never tell us about the Northern Ireland visits very much in advance because of the security risks. So actually the public only find out, I think, when they arrive. We get to find out, just a few days before. But interestingly, where we are, as I said earlier, this morning, a couple of 100 miles or less than 100 miles from the Russian border, we've known about this trip for 6 months, and it was announced more than a week ago. So quite interesting that clash happened despite where we are in, a difficult part of the world in Estonia, where everyone's very worried about the, what they call their hostile neighbour just over the border.
There has also been, during the visit, there's been a strong level of support from Prince William to the Ukrainian community that are over in Estonia. They have helped about 60,000 Ukrainians rebuild their lives here since the conflict started in 2022, and the royal family since that time have shown their support for for the Ukrainian people. And during this visit here, we have seen a real continuation of that support, haven't we?
Yeah, now, Charlene, you might have heard, if you were listening on the news yesterday, how we said that what that 60,000 is like if you compare it to the UK by population size. Estonia is quite small, 1.3 million people are here. But if the equivalent number had come to the UK proportionately, that would have meant the UK taking on 3 million Ukrainian refugees. So that's the kind of difference. And the school we were at with Prince William yesterday was said had been specially converted in a sort of disused gymnasium or something in order to teach some of the Ukrainian children that have been forced to flee here. And actually those that we spoke to were telling us that they just simply don't know, and the same goes for the teachers, they simply don't know when they can go home.
And William had a conversation with some students, some Ukrainian students that are currently living in Estonia, and he was saying to them, he was sort of really praising the resilience of the Ukrainian people, and it was something that he repeated more than once yesterday, so it was clearly something he very much wanted to be heard and to be picked up, not just by those he was meeting, but by us as well, who were clearly listening to his conversation.
What I love is the Ukrainian resilience is everywhere. You all are very smiley and very strong and very kind of spiritual people, and honestly that comes across everywhere. Even Ukrainians I met in the UK are like that.
Now, you're going to like this segue. I was watching the news yesterday, Chris. I was on the news. No, I wasn't. I was watching it yesterday. And one of the shots that they had of Prince William was that he was playing basketball with some Ukrainian refugees. Basketball is very popular in America, where his brother currently lives. And his brother was in the newspapers this week because his visa records were unsealed in court.
You know what? Some of your segues have been really good. I didn't think that one was one of the better ones. Hold on. Prince William was playing basketball in Estonia with some Ukrainians, and basketball was popular in America, and that's where Harry lives.
I think that's how we got there.
Yes!
Is that right?
Yes!
That one's going to go down as a 2 out of 10. Sorry.
But look, talk us through these visa records being unsealed in courts in the States then.
Yeah, well, look, we've discussed this before, haven't we? This Heritage Foundation, it's a right-wing sort of pressure group in America. They have, for some time now, been saying, well, look, if Harry is in the US, one of two things happened. He's admitted his drug use in his book Spare, where he said he took cocaine and marijuana and magic mushrooms. So therefore, either he lied on his immigration form and didn't tick the box to say, I have taken some illegal drugs before in my life, or he did declare it and he was given special treatment by the Department of Homeland Security in America. So we all were braced. In fact, we just arrived in here in Estonia on Tuesday night when this story was breaking. And what do we find out? There was just lots and lots of pages of, the word redacted is what every journalist doesn't want to hear. Lots and lots of pages of like rectangular black blobs, and we didn't really learn very much at all. They kept back Harry's personal file. So we don't know whether he ticked the box or not. But the one thing we did learn was that he didn't get any special treatment from the US government.
Let's move on now to our new feature, which is going back into the archives, back into our archives here at ITV News. We're going back to 1974, aren't we? We're going to go to a clip now from News at 10. And the presenter of the time was talking about the night of the attempted kidnapping of Princess Anne.
Good evening. There's been an assassination attempt on Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips, but they escaped unhurt. The gunman opened fire on their car 200 yards from Buckingham Palace. Their private detective, their chauffeur and a policeman on point duty were wounded in the shooting. So was a man who was walking past. The policeman was shot in the stomach and is undergoing an emergency operation. Princess Anne and Captain Phillips escaped injury, although a spokesman from Buckingham Palace said they're obviously very shaken.
So talk us through this. This is from 1974, isn't it?
Do you know what? A really significant moment in 1974, where when you look back at it now, I'm sure lots of people remember it at the time, but yeah, Princess Anne, and also a very injured police officer as well, who was, when Princess Anne a few years later recalled the story of what happened that night, she said, well, he got shot in the hand and then he got shot in the stomach, and then this police officer, was very lucky to keep his life, but equally, Princess Anne owes him a huge debt of gratitude, and they did actually meet up just a few years ago. But yeah, what a kind of an attempt on, we don't know, on her life, or at least he wanted to kidnap Princess Anne, who famously said, "I ain't going nowhere." I'm sure she put it in a much more polite way, but she basically said, "Not on your Nelly am I getting out of this car," and she refused to move.
Yeah, we were listening back the other day actually to an interview that Princess Anne gave to Michael Parkinson, and they were talking about this incident in 1974, and she was saying that, you know, in a typical Princess Anne way, really, which was sort of very much brushing this off, saying, you know, he wanted me to go with him. I can't really remember why, but basically I didn't want to go with him, and I said that to him in the politest way that I could.
I tell you what, there'll be a lot of people listening to this who, when it comes to kidnap attempts, it's not something that we hear much about with the current royals. But, you know, when we go back in time and we look at the different situations that the royals have been in, a lot has changed over time, hasn't it?
But you know what, a lot of people say to me that when the royals go on trips and they go up to the crowds, and in fact there's lots of pictures of Prince William doing exactly that here in Estonia after one of the events on Thursday. He went along and did the classic walkabout. Lots of people were there. In these days that involves taking selfies. In fact, William was taking some of the phones off them and doing the selfies for them. And a lot of people say to us, how is it that is allowed to happen? Because when you've got someone like a Prime Minister or President, often in the countries that we visit, their security teams cannot believe that the head of state, in the case of King Charles, is allowed to get so close to the crowds. And it's just the way in which they operate. They operate them with a much less visible security, but I mean, you will see them. I mean, we kind of recognise their faces, and we can see them sometimes in the crowd. Sometimes they pretend that they're wearing casual clothing, and we see, yep, that's one of them. Yeah, I mean, they literally do it in a different way. However, you're right, there is security, and they are armed, but the royals are just policed in a different way to a lot of the politicians that we see, who are literally encased in sort of a layer of security, aren't they?
And it's a really important part of their job, isn't it? Meeting people wherever they go, whether that's in Estonia this week or whether they're, you know, out and about in the UK. It's very much about meeting people. But you're right. It's sort of staggering, really, that it happened in 1974.
Very quickly, talk us through the royals doing their obligatory Paddy's Day pictures. Kate was pictured with a pint of Guinness this week, wasn't she?
A half a pint, I think.
Half a pint.
But this is half a pint.
I'm not sure she drank it all either, but she definitely took a sip out.
Definitely took a sip. So she was at the annual St Patrick's Day parade for the Irish Guards. The Irish Guards, because she is their Colonel-in-Chief, and it was quite a poignant moment, really, because it's the first time that she has done the parade as a solo engagement since she took over as their Colonel-in-Chief. Of course, she couldn't do it last year because she was receiving treatment for cancer, and I think it's a really special day for the Irish Guards. They nodded to the fact that the Princess had put some money behind the bar for them, which I'm sure went down very well indeed. The mascot of the Irish Guards, Seamus, the dog, was there. He was in quite a lot of the photographs, and half a pint of Guinness that she took a sip of during the 3 cheers.
And Charlene, talking about the Princess of Wales's health, actually we're coming up this weekend to this sort of year anniversary that news broke in that video message that Kate released just at the start of the school Easter holidays, that she had been treated for cancer. And you remember that was all timed around her children finishing school, so that they wouldn't get a ton of questions from their classmates, and they could go off and enjoy their Easter holidays. But Easter's a bit later this year, but the anniversary is coming up, and it's a reminder of what a lot has happened to the Wales family. We've had William here without Kate, for example, and I think ordinarily on a spring tour, this is a very short one, by the way, and Kensington Palace are not using that term spring tour, but ordinarily it would be the two of them together going and visiting a country for that tour, and it's not happening this year.
Yeah, the Princess of Wales, we've talked about this a lot. She is still very much sort of gradually returning to public duties as she still sort of focuses on her recovery. And we've seen her on engagements, but it is still very much that slow and steady return so that she can focus on her recovery at the same time.
Now, we haven't got long, but I want to do a throwback to the show last week when you guys were talking about this.
In 1980, when he was on a ski trip, he came out dressed in a disguise with a fake moustache and nose and a hat on, and said to the waiting press, "The Prince of Wales isn't coming out today, isn't skiing today."
Does this picture exist?
It does exist.
Oh, well, I think we need to get hold of this. Don't
Yeah, we definitely
Okay, so next week's podcast, that's your task.
Right, so that was your task, Lizzie. Have you succeeded in getting us a picture of the then Prince of Wales, but now King in disguise?
We have got a picture. Shall we have a look at it?
Go on. No. Is that actually Prince Charles?
Believe it or not, it's like the classic disguise that you would go down to the fancy dress shop and buy, isn't it? It's fantastic that he did that to the photographers at the time, and I suppose it says something about that relationship with the prince as he was then and the press. It's gone up and down a lot over the years, but that kind of suggests that was a period of time when he quite liked having him there and decided to play a trick on them. But what a photo that is.
I think it also says something about his sense of humour. What I also like is that the photographers, some of the photographers that were there, then in return dressed up like Charles dressed up. Yeah, there's 4 of them, and he obviously enjoyed that because he had a photo taken with them.
Oh, that is brilliant. And we don't often see that sort of, nice, friendly relationship between the royals and the paps. But essentially, you're all on these tours and stuff together. So he will recognise a lot of faces, and I guess would have felt quite comfortable around them.
Yeah, I mean, we know the teams around Prince William, and they know all the various royal correspondents, royal producers, and many of the photographers are the same as well. So we do know each other quite well. We just don't kind of socialise as much as we would like to, because one of us is either preparing for a bulletin or getting up and doing a photo somewhere, or travelling on a bus, or in our case, running across muddy fields today. So yeah.
And we appreciate your hard work, of course we do. And for anyone who's listening rather than watching, if you want to be able to take a look at that picture of Prince Charles, the King, then Prince Charles, it will be across our socials for you to be able to take a look at. And I promise you, it is worth taking a look. It's an absolutely brilliant picture. Guys, thank you so much. We'll be back together again next week, won't we? But you obviously will be here rather than in Estonia.
Yes, we just got to navigate how to get home, given the news from Heathrow Airport today. But if we're not back by next Thursday, we'll find somewhere to do it.
And just to tease next week, we've got a very special engagement that we will be doing next week that we can bring you all the latest on.
Oh, we love it when he teases with something. Well, Lizzie and Chris, thanks so much for joining us from Estonia. But that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you for being with us as ever, whether you are listening or if you are watching. Remember, if you do enjoy listening to Talking Royals, then you can hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And you can also watch us on ITVX and on YouTube. As you heard, Chris and Lizzie will be back with me in the studio next week. I've missed them, so can't wait for them to be back with me, but we'll see you next week.